Welcome to the Bible Made Clear. So today will be another video with Herb and I where we're going to walk through one of the challenges that people that believe in evolution typically will challenge people that are creationists. Herb will be our creationist, and I'll challenge him with a couple of questions. So you ready, Herb?
Go ahead.
All right. So the first one is, how can you Christians believe the Bible when it doesn't support the basic scientific truth of evolution?
Well, that's that's an accusation that's unfounded. The basic scientific truth of evolution does not exist. So that's really a non-question there. That's you know we've discussed the problems with evolution and how if you really look at it, it doesn't. It's not supported by science. There are things that you can grab onto and speculate about it. But, we talked a little bit about adaptation, or as some people refer to it as microevolution, and those things are true. They're scientifically founded. We know that animals adapt over time to particular environments or food sources or whatever. They do have that ability to adapt. When we're talking about, when somebody talks about evolution, we're talking about simple cell to much more complex animals. And there is no mechanism that supports that. The rate of mutations does not support that. And so we reject it on scientific grounds. Furthermore, if we use the Bible as our starting point, we would see that God created all things fully formed as they are. And if we take that as truth, then there's no evolution. And we don't just take it because the Bible says that. We look out into the world, we look at science because we do not deny science. Many of us love science, and there are many creationists that have dedicated their lives to science. So without any evidence for evolution, we'd certainly reject it.
So you would say that the reason that the Bible doesn't support evolution is because evolution's not supportable.
It's not supportable, no.
All right. So how about this question? The Bible's an ancient book that was changed over the years in so many ways, no one really knows the original text. So why would you hang on to it?
The Bible was written over many years with many different authors. And as far as the changes that have been made in it, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about there and where you get this information from.
Well, isn't the Bible just one thing written, and then somebody copies that and somebody copies that and somebody copies that all the way down through the hundreds of years?
The Bible is made of many different books by many different authors. And we see cohesion in that. We see prophecy made in the Bible that is later fulfilled. We have transcription of documents that's verified, that copies that are made match originals, and we can verify it through that. We have the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are from, I think, as far back as 300 BC, if I remember correctly. And one of those is the book of Isaiah, which I think there was quite a bit of Isaiah in that, and we see that it matches what we see today. When we read our Bibles today and we read Isaiah, we're reading the same thing. So as far as changes that were made over time, I think that that's not a valid argument. And Also, another point that has to be considered, and I think it's powerful testimony for this, is that over the years, having many different authors, they were all in unity. They were all saying the same thing and pointing in the same direction. These were men that they had no contact with one another. They didn't know one another, but they were all writing the same prophetic messages, and they all harmonized very well together. So I don't see how the accusations that changes have been made over time, it doesn't hold here. I don't blame anybody who hasn't looked into this for themselves for suspecting such a thing, because we often see that in literature through history, that things do get changed over time. But we have the verification that that's not the case with the Bible. All the copies that we have are very much in unison with one another, and there have not been changes made over time.
All right.
So,
How about this question? The Bible teaches a lot of things that everyone knows is wrong and evil, and the God of the Bible seems pretty angry at everyone.
well, that's a very interesting question. We know these things are evil, and I would just throw right back at you. How do you know that they're evil? What is evil? We have to have some, well, as is said, I think it was C.S. Lewis that said it. How do you know what a straight line is unless you can see a crooked line and compare it? Evil. What is that? What right do you have to say that something is evil without some standard to measure that thing which you're calling evil? So I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, don't you think everybody knows what's evil and good?
We do. We do. It's written on our hearts, and it's written on our hearts by our Creator. Without Him, how would we know what's evil? In other words, we have certain standards in our society. We don't hit each other over the head and take what belongs to another person. We know that that's evil to do such a thing. But we look at the animal world and we see one bear kill another bear to get what he had, take his food away from him, and we consider that to be just fine. That's just the natural order of things. So if we call that evil in our society, what standard do we have to call that evil? Why can't we just behave like the bears do? Isn't that fine? Isn't that the evolutionary worldview, the naturalistic worldview? We do things that benefit us without regard to anyone or anything else. So I don't see how you can say that that something is evil without that standard. It's just your opinion.
Well, I mean, don't you think that our understanding of right and wrong have just evolved over the years?
Evolved how? How can that? How can we?
Well, we got, I mean, you go from being an animal to a human, and then the human, you know, says that, well, I won't hurt this person because I don't want the person to hurt me.
Yeah, but we're not talking about good and evil there. We're talking about preferences. You might say the society has evolved in a way where we've established preferences that we don't want other people to take what's ours, and because of that, we're going to make a rule here. You don't take what belongs to me, and thus I won't take what belongs to you. But that's just a mutual benefit preference. There's nothing evil in that. It's just something we've worked out together. And it's a preference of the people in that society to live in that way. But you can't call it evil.
So
you have no standard to judge that against.
So you're saying if you don't have an absolute standard of measurement, then you can't know what's good or evil.
You have no, there, without an absolute standard of measurement, good does not exist, nor does evil. We have preferences.
So you,
And we can, look at different societies throughout history. We can look at, well, we could look at the Nazis, and they decided the extermination of the Jews was in their best interest. So they went about doing that. How can we say that what they did is evil? We know it was evil. We know it. It's written in our hearts, and every human being that's ever existed knows that that's evil behavior. Yet, from a naturalistic perspective, you can't really say that. That wasn't evil. That's what that society decided was best for them to do. So it was a good thing in their eyes, what they were doing. No evil, just preference. But let
so
me emphasize, we know it was evil. We know that.
so the only way that you know that it would have been evil is that you would have an absolute standard to measure it against. What would be the
You have
absolute?
to have a standard,
Well,
right?
what would have been the standard to decide that they were wrong?
The law, the God-given law, it's written on our hearts. It's also in writing. We have the 10 Commandments. He tells us to follow these commandments. That's the law. That is what we follow. And we know all of these things. We know them to be good. Everybody knows that.
Um, so, do you think that um, do you think the Nazis knew that they were doing something wrong?
Absolutely, they did. They knew it because they're human beings, and it was written on their hearts by their Creator. They knew that they were doing wrong. But my argument is that if it's just all a naturalistic process, you can't say what they were doing is wrong. But yes, we all know that it's wrong. But
So,
how do we know that it's wrong?
so if 51% of the people in a society say it's okay to do something, does that make it okay? Does that make it right?
No, no. We go back. We go back to that again. We know that the Nazi society decided that they would do this, and not all of them, of course. A lot of people knew what they were doing. Well, I'll expand on that. All of them knew. Hitler himself knew what he was doing was evil and wrong. But as a society, he got enough people to back him to carry this out, carry this wicked behavior out. No, it wasn't okay that they did it. They did do it. It was still evil, completely evil. They did it anyway. But they decided as a society that this was for the good, and they went ahead and did it. No, that doesn't make it okay. It was still evil. And again, I'll say that they knew it in their hearts. They knew that. But how does a naturalist know that? What are they appealing to call this evil? Just the fairness that they think that they develop through evolution, just to get along as a society. What is it when we look at something like that? When we look at these atrocities that have been done throughout our history, we don't just look at it and say, "Oh, well, they're breaking the rules. We've decided not to do that. They're breaking the rules." No, we feel something inside of ourselves that really it hurts something in our souls. It's not just something without feeling. We don't look at it and say, "Well, that's not what we agreed upon. We need to get that straightened out." There's something that's affected in our souls that we know that a tremendous evil has been done, and that's due to what our God has put in us, what He's written on our hearts. We know that that's being violated and that we're going against Him. That's where we get all of this from. And I don't have the words to express it. the way I would like to. But without that, you truly cannot say that this was an evil thing. It just goes against what your preference is. It's your desire that that not be so. And in that sense, an atheist who alienates himself from God, does not accept God, they can still live a moral life. They can be what we would call in our society a good person and not do those horrible things. And I'm sure that there are many atheists that we would call them good people. They live moral lives in that sense, and by our standards, and they don't do things like that. They know these things are wrong. But my argument is, how do they call that wrong? How do they know in their hearts that this is wrong? They have no standard on which to call this evil or this good. I hope I'm making sense here.
So you're saying if you have nothing outside of people to measure good or bad, then that means the decision lies within each individual person, and it's their opinion.
It's their opinion. That's right. Right.
Something to think about.
If I hit you over the head and I took your wallet, you would be upset with me. But on what grounds? I was just doing what was best for me. Right?
Well,
on what grounds?
You may be upset when you open the wallet.
Yeah. Well, that may be. That may be. But I took your wallet nonetheless, and that's a violation. Even if you didn't have anything in it, you'd still feel violated that I took your wallet. And
I wouldn't like it.
On what grounds though?
It was wrong.
Can you just get up and say, well, he did what was best for him, so I understand. And no forgiveness needed, because I was just, acting on impulse to benefit myself.
No,
you're calling me wrong by what standard?
I'd hunt you down.
Yeah. Yeah. Is a wallet worth driving all the way to Maine for?
Well, true. I'd have to sneak onto your land.
Yeah, but I hope the point is made there that we're not saying that somebody who rejects God and rejects His law is going around knocking people over the head and taking their wallets. We know that that's not true. They abide by laws, and they know in their hearts it's wrong, and they don't do those things because they know it's wrong, and they don't want to hurt another person to gain for themselves. The point is this: by what standard do they call it wrong, and how do they know that what they're doing is wrong, rather than it just being a vote? Because if it was just a vote and we decided not to do that to one another so that our society can get along without living in fear that somebody's going to take your stuff, that you would have no feeling of that. You would just say, okay, we've entered into a contract, and you would not like the fact that it's been violated at some points, but you wouldn't have any real feeling about it. It would just be a thing, like an event that happened. You don't have any emotions about it, but you do. Where does that come from? How do you know? By what standard do you call that evil? And you can't do that without a standard. There has to be a moral standard that exists above us, that has been provided to us by a moral lawgiver. And again, it's written on our hearts of all of us. We all know good and evil. We just know it.
Yeah. Well, how about this question? The Bible says that God loves everyone, yet He sends people to hell. Is that loving?
God loves everyone, and He has, as He has displayed, a tremendous desire for all to be with him. He wants us all to be with him, but he doesn't force us to be with him. So, in that sense, he doesn't send anyone to hell. They choose separation from him, and that's hell. But it's by their choice.
So you're saying
He's
that they
made,
say, I want to go to hell?
in their actions, yes. Yes, those that reject him so much, they reject his law, they reject the fact that he is who he is, and they will be beholden to no one. They will answer to no one. And that's saying, I don't want you. I don't want to be around you. I can't stand the idea of being in your presence. And he allows them to make that decision because he gave us free will. And he won't force anyone into his presence that doesn't desire to be there. Everyone that is in heaven with him is someone who desires to be with him and someone who recognizes their need for him, recognizes their inability to live as he would desire us to live. We can't do it without him, and he knows that. And people that say that God sends people to hell, that's just not the way it is. There will be nobody that goes to hell that desires to spend eternity in his presence.
And so how come he doesn't just like make a planet and stick everybody that doesn't want to go to heaven on that planet?
Well,
Let them party it up.
Hell.
Huh?
That's hell. That's hell. There'll be no partying in hell. But when you say the planet, stick everybody on that planet, that's basically hell. That's what you're talking about.
You mean like
who knows? Maybe hell is a planet somewhere.
You mean isolating them?
Isolating them, yeah. It's isolation.
So
away from him.
So you're saying he kind of quarantines them like a virus on a computer.
Would you, as a Christian, would you want somebody in heaven like an Adolf Hitler, who's in rejection of his creator, who has the heart that he has? Do you want to be there with him? Or do you want somebody who recognizes their shortcomings, I'll say, that recognizes their need for salvation, that they cannot do this without the Lord, that cannot stand before the Lord on their own and say that I'm clean, Lord, let me in, without asking Jesus Christ to wash them or to stand beside them and acknowledge them and say to the Lord, to the Father, he's one of mine.
Well, I think if Hitler was allowed into heaven, being an unrepentant sinner and not wanting to be there, he'd try to create Nazi Germany up there, right?
Yeah, you don't want to be part of that, do you? I don't want to be part of it.
Well, that does bring up a point. Oftentimes people are there's an appeal for people to be at a place morally. For example, we have the school here, right, at the church, and there's requirements for kids to get into it, obviously, and one of those requirements is that at least one parent needs to be a Christian going to a Bible teaching church, and so we've had unbelievers come in and apply their kids and all that, but because they don't want them in public school, they want them in a place where there's a moral standard. However, they don't want They don't want God. They don't want Christ. They don't want to be submitted to him, and nor do the kids. But they don't realize if you keep letting kids in like that, which the school won't let them in, but if they keep letting them in, then it'll just change over eventually to the public school that they left.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, people don't
Yeah.
seem to grasp that. Um, you know, I hear what you're saying. You're saying that if you let everybody in heaven that doesn't want to be there, it won't be heaven very long, will it?
Well, to your point, another example of that would be, and a fear that I have, we have these blue states that are just falling apart, just miserable places to live.
That's us.
Yeah, I'm there too.
Well,
Maybe not as
yeah,
blue.
Maine's not.
Yeah,
You're not even in the
yeah, I
same
know.
galaxy as
Yeah,
Massachusetts.
yeah. But you have these people from California, from New York, Massachusetts, deep blue states. And they can't stand the way the state is being run because it's just falling apart, economically, morally, just falling apart. So they decide to move and they want to go to a red state like Texas or Tennessee. And they want to have the benefits
Of a red
that we
state.
find in the freedoms that they have. And so that appeals to them. But they go to those states and they bring their blue values with them and they're going to vote blue. And my fear is that if this continues to happen, are they not going to just flip those states blue and then they're right back from what they ran away from? I don't think that a lot of these people think it through very well. Why would you bring those same ideals with you to a new home where you've run away from all that stuff? We'll see what happens.
Isn't
I'd
that
rather see some.
isn't that what
I'd
happened
rather see
with
red state people.
the the border?
Yeah, yeah. That's the whole idea of the border. Get these people in here. We're going to give you free stuff, so vote for us.
Yeah.
But
But that's so true of anything. Um, and I think that you can apply that principle to probably so many areas of life, right? Um,
oh yeah,
you
yeah,
know, I mean, if if you had, for example, if you had like a friend that was a bum and wanted to go live in your basement or retire there,
yeah, yeah. Got to
um,
watch out for that.
yeah, um, if they ruin the environment that they were in before they get to your house, what do you think they do at your house, right? Right?
Yeah,
Same thing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
They see
it,
greener pastures and they want to be in those greener pastures, and then they get there and they ruin them, and now it's
well,
just all mud.
and then I mean, you know, and you see that everywhere. You know, you have these wooded areas that are beautiful, and then people go there and they end up wrecking them. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh yeah.
every
Yeah.
place man goes, he brings the problems that he has with him, and then ends up ruining
Yeah.
them. I mean, isn't
Yeah.
that part of the reason why you retired to Maine,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
off in the
I
woods there?
That's what I like. Yeah. Just away from the crowds and all.
Yeah. Well,
And
and you were hoping that the state would stay relatively normal minded, but I think unfortunately Portland is shifting the balance for you guys, huh?
well, yeah. Portland does run the state up here. That's where the population is. Now I'm in a red area. If you go down to the coast, that turns blue down there. But where I am, it's red, and north of here is red, but we don't have the population here. And so Portland is really,
Well, north of
really
you,
the center of all.
there's not really a lot of people north of you, right? I mean, there's pockets of people, but I mean, when we go up to vacation there, I mean, you drive through some of the towns. There's not a lot of people that live in some of those little towns.
Oh no, you go up north of Bangor and it's just, I don't know, there's 6 or 7 people up there wandering around with straws.
And a corncob pipe.
Yeah, yeah.
But the reason that they're red is because they work and they just want to live freely, right?
The people that they're independent and they know that if they don't get up in the morning and go out and hay that field, nobody's going to do it for them. So whether they're sick or it's raining or it's freezing cold out, they need to get out and work their property. That's where their living comes from. If they don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for them. They don't even know what a handout is. And that's where they develop this attitude of independence, and they don't look to the government to solve their problems. They solve their problems themselves. And that's the big difference. You go down to Portland and Boston and all that, people don't have that same work ethic, and they look at government as something completely different than what the people of northern Maine look at it as. They look at it as their parents, to look out for them, take care of all their needs. Anything that's not working out, give me a subsidy, and you owe it to me, kind of thing.
Well, they work. They just work at trying to get the stuff from the government. That's about
Right.
it, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. They want to live. They want to live on the nipple. That's it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So, all right. Final question: with all the contradictions in the Bible, why would you abandon science and cling to the bleak hopes that God created everything?
Well, where do we begin with that? That's why do you abandon science? Who's abandoned science, and how has that been done? Are we going back to evolution again? Are we?
Well, I mean, look, I mean, the question implies you're either going to believe evolution or you're going to believe the Bible. Which one is it going to be? Now, I know that there are those that believe that God used evolution, but I guess that'd be a silly place to go, because if there's no evidence for evolution, there certainly wouldn't be evidence for evolution without
No.
God, right?
No. I just don't. There's no evidence for evolution. Period. Atheistic or theistic, evolution didn't happen. I have absolute confidence in that. And more people, despite what some might say, more and more people are feeling that way. Now, are they open about it? Do they just come out and express this view? No. They know what will happen to them if they do that. So
you're talking about people in the professional area?
Yeah, academia and, science research and things like that. But yeah, I think it's slowly coming out that this just isn't working out. So to say that I hang on to the Bible and reject science is absolutely false. I hang on to the Bible and I rely on the Bible. But as I look to the Bible and what it has to say, and then I look out into the world and study science, I find that the two are hand in hand. How this all came to be, that you either believe the Bible or you believe science, to me it's kind of baffling, because does the Bible answer all scientific questions? Absolutely not. Do we have some things that we don't understand? Being a young earth creationist, are there questions that I can't answer? Absolutely there are. But in the naturalistic view of things, they have questions too that they can't answer. And what's funny about that is they come up with solutions that in their minds are perfectly fine and justified. But if we speculate on things like, certain areas in science that we would speculate on. How could this be? And we look at it and throw out ideas of how this could be. That's just laughed at and ridiculed. But they do the same thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. You have to come up with a hypothesis, and then you work on it. I think what bothers me is when they throw out a hypothesis, they often state it as fact. I'll give you an example. We see comets buzzing around our solar system. These comets should only last thousands of years. If our solar system is 4.5 billion years old, these comets should be long gone, and they know that. So how do they explain that? We look at it and say, well, we in a young solar system with a young Earth, we would expect that we would still be seeing comets as we do. They should expect that we see no comets, but we do. So what do? They come up with a theory called the Oort cloud. The Oort cloud is an area outside of our solar system that is supposedly generating these comets, and then they break off through some gravitational force or whatever, the distant supernova, and then they kick them into the solar system, and they start going around the way that they do.
I don't mean to laugh. It just sounds like you're talking about like a Star Trek episode.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what it is. I say, fine, come up with your hypothesis. That's all it is a hypothesis. We have no reason at all to believe that there's an Oort cloud out there. It's just an idea to try to justify the long ages of the solar system and the Earth. So there must be an Oort cloud out there generating comets. Seems kind of odd to me, a comet factory that just happens to be out there.
I think it's right next to the universe creator.
Yeah, I think you take a left.
The multiverse, it keeps creating universes. They're on a table right next to each other.
Well, that's okay. So segue into another topic, but yeah, this is the same kind of thing. The multiverse. Why is our universe so finely tuned? Easy to explain. There's been billions, perhaps trillions of universes that have been created by the universe creator. So it just stands to reason that one of them would come out so finely tuned as we are. That explains that. Now we can move on. Now that we've scientifically satisfied that one, we can move on.
Yeah.
But you see, they do it all the time. Inflation in the early universe.
And we're not talking about Bidenomics, right?
No. That's a whole different thing. But, cosmic background radiation. And we look at the size of the universe, and whatever direction we look in, we're seeing the same heat. So that heat has dispersed itself evenly throughout the universe, but there has not been enough time in the existence, according to the theory of the Big Bang, there's not enough time for that to have happened. Okay, so what do? They come up with the theory of inflation. That at one time in the early universe, the universe was very small, and at that time the heat could disperse throughout that smaller universe. It would have had the time, and then it expanded at great speed for a period of time, and then it slowed back down again. Okay, that would explain it. But what's your mechanism that started this tremendous expansion, that it picked up speed tremendously like that? And then once it did, what slowed it back down again? No explanation for that. We just teach it as though that was that's the facts. So we have an Oort cloud. They have no problem teaching it as that. Okay, that's good. Some people, not everybody buys into this, but the multiverse and the universe making machine. Some people teach that as though that's the answer. Not everybody does. I'm not throwing that out there as though everybody buys into that as an explanation. But my point is that they come up with things like that, and they're just fine with it. We we have our problems in young Earth creation. We look out into the universe and we see galaxies and, well, stars just in our own Milky Way galaxy. We see stars that are many thousands of light years away. Well, how do we see them if they're only if there's only been 6,000 years for us to see those? That's a good question, and one that we don't have answers to.
Because the light wouldn't be here yet.
The light wouldn't be here yet. No. Different ideas have been thrown out, and I think some pretty good ones, some valid ones. And I know I've discussed with you Jason Lyle and his idea about the one-way speed of light. As you know, when we measure the speed of light, it's reflected. We can't, of course, we can't measure it in the one-way speed. We can't go out, 2 light years away, say, and somebody shine a flashlight and we pick it up and see how fast it is. We can't do that, so we have to reflect it. Like on the moon, they have mirrors, and you can bounce a laser off of that. And how long does it take to go to that mirror, reflect, and come back to Earth? And we would cut that in half, and we say that's the speed of light. But is there any possibility that the one-way speed of light is not that? Could it possibly be instantaneous? I don't know. It seems to me that the light speed being reflected would be the same, but I think it's a worthwhile thing to look into. Maybe not. There are a lot of things with time and light and the nature of these things we can't even begin to understand. We have some ideas of it, but we don't know what happens with as we approach light speed, get very close to light speed, time is totally distorted. It slows down quite a bit. In fact, when you get to the speed of light, there is no time experienced. So a photon coming from a distant galaxy or a distant star, is that experiencing time? And is there a possibility that it could be just an instantaneous thing that we see? In other words, when the stars were lit up for the first time in creation week, did we not see them at this great distance instantaneously? That's something we don't know. If we just look at it, that the speed of light is 180,000 miles per second, well, certainly it would take a great deal of time for it to get here. And as far as we know, that's it. But we have discovered other things through Einstein's field equations and all that may make us rethink that. We don't know that. I'm certainly not putting it out there as this is an explanation for it, but I think Jason Lyle is doing some good work with that. And he certainly wouldn't put it out there as a fact, like this is what happened. But I think he might be onto something there. We'll see.
So, time is measured differently related to gravitational bodies. Is that correct?
There's time is distorted by travel, by speed. There's also a gravitational effect on time. In other words, if you're close to a massive body, time would be distorted by that.
I mean, haven't they done experiments where like time on Earth is slower than time further away from Earth?
Yeah. You've heard about the clock on a mountaintop and the clock on, at sea level, and there are differences. It's the gravity that how it really works isn't fully understood. We just know that it works that way. We've done experiments like with travel and atomic clocks being very precise, having one in a stationary position on the ground, putting one into a jet, flying around the world, coming back and finding that the one in the jet ran more slowly, very not any significance at all, because of those speeds is really indistinguishable, and you would need an atomic clock to find that very minute difference, but the difference there is. I remember first being exposed to this many years ago and thinking how ridiculous that was. It goes against your intuition to think that time could be different anywhere, no matter what speed or where you were located. Time is time. And I thought it must have been something with the traveling, the clock wasn't quite right, something like that happened, and this was all very speculative. And then looking into it and measuring the half-life of mesons coming into the Earth's atmosphere. And there's an equation called the Lorentz equation that tells you at what speed time would be affected. And it's really not affected all that much until you get close to the speed of light, which mesons coming into the atmosphere are, quite fast. So in our Earth time, we would expect that when mesons are first detected in the upper atmosphere, they having a very short half-life at a certain altitude, we should, if we measure 100 mesons, so to speak, and then at this distance, we should measure 50 mesons, because that's the distance of a half-life. And we find out that no, we're not measuring 50, we're measuring 75. And that's because their half-life has been slowed down, because their speed, time has changed for them, and their clocks are running slower. And I thought that was quite fascinating. So that would tell us, knowing that, and this is an experiment that is repeatable and has been repeated many times, showing us that in fact, the time to the meson has slowed down because of the speed that it's been traveling at, getting close to the speed of light. And that verifies it.
I mean,
We work it out in math.
is it possible that time out as far as we can get in the universe would be measured differently than here on Earth?
In a stationary position? Is that what you're talking about? Like
No,
if you just put a clock out in space somewhere?
well, I mean, well, you have to relate it to the speed of light, because that's what they're doing. That's how they're getting the universe 14.6 billion years old, because they shoot out, they see whatever it is furthest away, whatever star, or right, and then they know the
Yeah.
light from that star, if it's at certain distance based on their telescope, then it's going to have to be the equal time coming back, correct?
Yeah. That's
So,
all, a lot of this is theory. So, yeah, what they do, like you just said, they would measure, they shoot out a laser, and then when it's reflected back, they cut the time in half. But we don't know if that is correct. We just don't know that.
well, then
We don't know.
how can they be so certain about the like well, maybe I should take a step back. So there are certain things related to the speed of light and time that are speculative regarding an old universe, correct?
Correct.
There are certain things regarding the speed of light and time that would become very speculative for a young universe.
Yep.
So if we eliminate the speculations of the speed of light and time related to that, then we're left with the measurements that we have within the world that we live in. And wouldn't that keep time more accurately because it's in our atmosphere, in our terrestrial, and it's on the planet. And so looking at planetary measurements for age would be the better um, the better determiner for age than like dealing with stuff very speculative that's way out at the end of the universe, or how they're looking at
Um,
that.
you're absolutely correct about that, and I feel very strongly about that. And we look at the evidence for a young Earth, and it's overwhelmingly in favor of a young Earth. Um, the only thing that is what we were just talking about, the speed of light. But my thought is that we have so much evidence that the Earth is young, as the Bible tells us, that to have this problem with the light and the distant stars and galaxies and what have you, I don't think that that's enough to overturn the fact that the Earth is young. It's just something that we don't understand. And I think the nature of light and time is is something that we have very little understanding of. And I would go so far as to say that though we don't understand it at this time, I think there's an explanation for it. And I think, certainly not in my lifetime, but at some point in the future, if the Lord tarries, they may very well have an answer for that. Now, whether or not they're going to want to accept it and
Yeah,
put it
it's a
out there, I
different
don't know.
story. Yeah.
I think, yeah, yeah. But again, I go back to the fact that they have their problems with an old universe, and we have that problem with a young universe. And I can't answer, and I can't pretend that we have the answers for it. And
So the
yeah, but
speed,
I think the
but the speed of light is a problem for both. The way they fix the
yes,
speed of light problem with the old universe is to add inflation into the calculation for the Big Bang.
right, right. And these are the same people, mind you, that point fingers and say God of the gaps. So what are you guys doing?
Yeah, yeah. No, I know
We're
it's
we're speculating. We're speculating. We're throwing out some hypothesis. Well, not weird. The Jason Riles of the world. They're doing that, and they're being accused of God of the gaps. They're just doing science, coming up with theories. How could this be? I feel like the guy that's trying to work through a complicated physics equation. I have the answer at the end. I'm working through the equation and I got a good part of it done, but I'm having trouble working everything through. But I know the answer at the end. I know this is where we got to get to, but I'm not quite sure how to work through this part of the equation. But I know it's workable and I know what the answer will be at the end, if that makes any sense.
well, and I think that I guess there's a tremendous amount of assumptions that are made. Obviously, I mean, it's not like we can go out to the end of the universe and then check it out. It's just not
Right.
possible. So, not enough time, no pun intended. But
Yeah.
the so as opposed to fighting over the theories, I mean, people come up with things that are. I mean, look, there's a lot of Christians that certainly believe in the uh, the Big Bang, right? There are Christians that believe in the Big Bang that are scientists and
Yeah.
whatnot, and then there are Christians that are scientists that reject the Big Bang. Um, I mean, the Big Bang is a model. Uh, I mean, it would assume, from a Christian standpoint, for Christians that believe it, it assumes that God started out with a singularity. It does. The Bible doesn't say he started out with one, but it just says that he
Right.
spoke everything into existence and it was there. I don't.
Hmm.
I mean, the Big Bang is supposedly an explosion from a singularity. That's not really what we read in the Bible. It just says that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The assumption would be that he created the heavens and the earth from that singularity that exploded out and eventually all that stuff formed over time. Am I
Yeah.
misunderstanding?
Yeah. I don't, they're not really, these days, they're not saying an explosion. They just refer to it as the expansion of a region of space.
Well,
Matter came in.
I know, but what else? Well, either way, all right. So, I mean, it had
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
start from
Well,
a point, right?
you got to be careful what you say, though. There wasn't an explosion.
All right.
You're going to get attacked for that kind
So,
of stuff.
well, so they should call it the Big Expansion instead of the Big Bang.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
But what did it
But
expand from?
nothing.
Well, they had to be something, and do you know what I mean? Like,
Well,
so even Christians that believe in the Big Bang would say that it had to expand from a singularity, though, correct? Because isn't I guess here's my point. The assumption is that because you look out into the universe and you see things moving away because of the redshift, then you just basically reverse it and work it all back to a single point.
that's what they do. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me ask
That's
you
what they do.
this: what if they what if God created it out there like as it is right now? Okay,
Yeah.
um, 6,000 years ago, and it's just expanding. And then Hubble gets up there with his telescope and he sees the redshift. The assumption is that it should be drawn back for time to a singularity, correct?
Right.
But what if it didn't start there?
Right. Well, then we're totally off.
But do you see
Not to
it?
change the subject, but it's interesting to me, and this has always fascinated me. And I remember the first time I read it, and it was after I had started getting into Stephen Hawking and understanding the expansion of the universe with the redshift and how the Big Bang was theorized, and how we have evidence for that. And we know that the universe is expanding in that way because of the redshift. And then reading Isaiah, who says that he stretches
The
the
heavens like a
universe.
curtain.
Yeah. And I thought, wow, what did Isaiah know about that? And that's just that was one of those moments in my life where I was like, wow,
Well, he knew more than Hawking, I'll tell you that.
you knew more than Hawking way before there were any advances like that in science. Isaiah was, yeah. How did Isaiah know that?
How do you know
I
the
mean,
Earth was hung on nothing?
yeah, yeah.
How do
I
you
mean,
know it was
this was a
circular?
time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And people that criticize the Bible, and I don't think that they understand these things. People that criticize the Bible hang up on certain verses, and they don't look into it. They don't get the meaning out of it, and like the Book of Jonah, to me, that is so deep and means so much to me and speaks so much to me. Is much and more than on the books in the Bible, and it really spoke to me and still does speak to me. People get caught up on, what do you mean he was swallowed by a fish and spent 3 days in the fish and they got spit up on land, and they miss everything. They pay no attention to what's going on there. And then what the Lord is doing through Jonah and has chosen Jonah to do this incredible thing. And then they say God is a cruel God who just wants to punish people. Look what he does to bring these people to salvation.
Oh, I
These
know.
wicked people.
Yeah.
He loves them so much despite all that. And what he did. And
Well,
wow,
the
I
people that
just,
criticize it, it's just the forest for the trees, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But
So,
I mean, I guess, you know, Herb, it's kind of like, and I always ask the students this, you know, when we're dealing with time. I said, if you walked in the room right now and you saw an hourglass upside down, and um, 2/3 of the sand was on the bottom, I said, how long do you think it would have been turned upside down? And almost every single one of them say, well, obviously, like they make the assumption that it was empty on top and turned upside down. And I
yeah,
said, but I could have turned it upside down 2 seconds before you walked into the room, and it's only a few grains of sand that fell. See, and that, and
yeah.
I guess I don't, I don't get um, where Christians make the assumption that God started out with a singularity, if you will, right? And then
Mhm.
because if he spoke everything into existence and everything is made as a system and everything else, um, it's the you're extrapolating back, you know, like like Hubble and Einstein and them did. You're extrapolating back all to this singularity for the full time, but yet, I mean, I mean, we haven't really been measuring it that long. I mean, people
No,
haven't been able to do that. So, I mean, that stuff could have been out there. He could have just went, you know, speak, it's there, and then it's just
yeah,
moving, and then they measure it and they go, oh, we got to measure it all the way back to here when it's only moved a little bit.
yeah. We, quantum mechanics has only existed for, a little over 100 years, 130 years maybe, since it first came into being. A lot of these things, like experiments with light, um, such things as that, we have very little understanding of. Now, there are experiments that are done that are just absolutely mind blowing, and
Like the Hadron
nobody really
Collider there.
understands. Yeah, yeah. I mean, just discovering things that we just cannot wrap our heads around. What frustrates me a little bit is that, yeah, these are wonderful things. I mean, I think that the science is great and they can be used to tell us a lot of things and give us a lot of understanding. But I don't like it when we have these scientists that we see these things and they really do. I don't mean to be so critical, but they do these experiments and they see the results of the experiments. And the fact of the matter is, we have no idea what some of these things mean, what they're saying. We have very little understanding of it at all. And yet they act like they got a handle on it, you know? And they throw things out as though this is, oh yes, this is a fact. We don't know what's going on. I mean, like, particle wave duality. We don't know what that's all about. I think it's incredible, but we don't understand it. We really don't, and it bothers me when you have these people that are talking like they're on top of all this. They're not. They're just not.
Well, I mean, it certainly does bring in grant money, but I think that
Well, okay, Scott, you said it. You
yeah,
said it.
yeah.
You know.
Um, but I guess to kind of bring it to a close, we're a little over an hour, but to bring it to a close, I just don't think that the there's too much assumption that goes into it. It's no different than um, building Nebraska Man from a pig's tooth. They had a
Oh yeah,
they
exactly.
had a pig's tooth, and they said no, it's a human tooth, and then they had what the guy looked like and his whole family and kids. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like, well, wait a minute, you just
Uh-huh.
found a tooth, you know? It wasn't
Yeah.
even human. It was a
Yeah.
pig's tooth, you know? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
um,
that's a good example.
there's
People are
just,
wild. They get way ahead of themselves.
well, because they know that, um, to your earlier point, they say this is where we got to end up. And if it
Right.
smells like it's going to go in that direction, let's just get it there. And, and that's, but, and that's fine, but that's not science.
No.
See, that would be
Well, okay.
that would be my beef. My beef is if you want to think that green men from Mars, and apparently Musk will know about that shortly, but but if you want to
Mhm.
think green men from Mars seeded the planet, that's fine. If you want to be a Scientologist and you think, Zeno from another galaxy planted people here or beings or whatever they were, you know,
Yeah.
with rocket ships, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but it's not science. It's science fiction, or it's it's an entertaining story, but it's not science. And I think that the
Yeah.
problem is within the realm of scientific endeavor, some of these stories, because of how they're told and with the big words that are used and concepts, um, it's the same assumption that the hourglass has been going since it was empty on the other on the other side, but yet they don't know. And they're just
Yeah.
making all these assumptions and saying this is the conclusion. So to think differently, you get your head in the sand. And I think that unfortunately people have followed that.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. And I think if you want to come up with the hypothesis that Zeno from Mars seeded the life here on Earth, fine. But now let's get to work and start getting some evidence that that is in fact the case. But they're not doing it. And that's exactly what's happening with evolution. They they have little bits of information like homology, we have the same structure as other animals, and you see this similar structure in this animal and that animal. And they say, okay, well, that shows us that evolution is true. And we know that evolution is true because we have complex animals here on Earth. So we know it's the truth. We know, okay, this is the truth of evolution. And so we just plug in things. We make things that fit along the way, but there's no real hard evidence. There just isn't. I don't care what they say. That we have all these evolutionists saying it's a proven thing. We know it beyond a doubt. It's just not. They don't have the evidence for it, and I don't. I'd like to say that I truly want to look at it with as much of an open mind as I can. And if the evidence was there to suggest that evolution was true, I would probably be a theistic evolutionist. But the evidence is not there. The evidence shows us that evolution just doesn't work. The only alternative to that, and here's the problem, is that we have a creator who created things over a 6-day period and created them as they are. And they created after their own kind. From the beginning until now, they're creating after their own kind. And that's where the evidence is. That's what we're seeing. Animals creating after their own kind. And any mechanism to make one animal over time turn into another one with a completely different body plan, there's nothing there to suggest it. There's no transitional forms. There's nothing in biology that says, well, here's a mechanism that could do that. There's nothing like that. And yet they persist and insist that this is the truth, that this is how it happened. And I would be labeled as the science denier. I don't see it. I mean,
Yeah,
come
no,
on, come up.
I agree. And
Yeah,
hey, there's a lot of opinions. Unfortunately, when you get into the area of even discussing science, It seems like they want it both ways. Science is a moving target. We're always learning. Yeah, we make mistakes. We learn things aren't true, and then we advance our hypotheses and all that and our theories. But that's on the one side. But on the other side, no, no, no. We know what it all is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
You got
well,
it all figured out.
what is it? You know, I just, I think that we have less answers than obviously we would like to have. But when we get to the Bible, everything we do have that the Bible teaches, we've discovered, at least where it references anything scientific or historical, to always be true. And every time we come out with, every time the archaeologist turns over another spade of evidence, it's never in contradiction. It's always in support. So,
No,
so
no.
the
And that's why I put my faith in the Bible, because of that very thing, because everything that it says is true. And I think one of the things, we certainly don't have time to get into that now, but the state of man in his fallen condition and how the Bible describes that, we see that every day. We see it in ourselves, and we see it in those around us, and we recognize our fallen nature and our need, absolute need for a savior that's been provided to us. And the story of that, from the fall of Adam, very early on, until Revelation, we see the whole story of the plan of redemption that's harmonious the whole way through. And to me, that's just an incredible story that was written over all those years by many different authors to maintain that direct line all the way through, telling the same process and the gradual process of it and what came to be, predictions of a coming Messiah, the Messiah coming, our need for that Messiah, the rejection of that Messiah. It's just anybody. It just bothers me so much that somebody would say that this is an ancient book of fairy tales that makes no sense at all. How much effort have you put into it? I don't know. Again, I go back to
usually none.
Yeah. Well, that's it. They don't. They don't. They have a picture in their head of Noah bouncing around on the waves with his ark filled with animals, and the giraffe sticking his head out the window with a big smile on his face.
Yeah.
And that's what, to them, that's the Bible. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's as far as they go.
Yeah. It's a caricature of lunacy.
Yeah. 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 It's just a cartoon.
But life coming from rocks, that's okay.
That's, yeah. Yeah. That's hardcore science. There we go. Yeah. And they would tell you, no, it doesn't come from rocks. You got to sprinkle some water on it too.
I know. It's amazing to me. They go, well, there could be water on Mars, so maybe there's life there. And it's like, I think it takes a little bit more than a little bit of water.
Yeah. Yeah. Some lightning. Yeah.
Yeah. Lightning and water. Well, you can stick some in your blender at home and maybe you'll come up with a person,
Why not?
Yeah. All right. So listen, if you've stayed with us this long, we appreciate it. So we'll be back next week with another topic. And until then, may God richly bless you as you continue to study his word.